My landlord texted me one morning, "Your rent's going up $600." No warning, no reason. I thought I was trapped until I called the city inspector. What happened next? He got fined thousands and the building finally felt like home again. I still remember that morning like it just happened. I was sitting by the window, drinking my coffee, watching the sunlight spill across my tiny apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. My plants thrived here, my books filled every corner, and I'd built a quiet little life in this space. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from my landlord, Mr. Campbell. "Hey, starting next month, your rent will increase to $2,100. I blinked. My rent was $1,500. No warning, no explanation, just a message like that. I texted back, "Is this a mistake? That's a $600 increase. I never got any notice." He replied within seconds. "No mistake. Market rates went up. If you can't afford it, you can move out." My stomach dropped. I'd been here 3 years, never missed a single payment. The lease had just renewed last month for another year. No mention of any increase then. When I called him, his tone was cold, almost smug. "It's legal," he said. "Check your contract. Or don't. Either way, pay up." I did check the contract 3 times. And no, it wasn't legal. It said he couldn't increase rent during the term of the lease without a written 60-day notice. I didn't know much about tenant law, but I knew this didn't smell right. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about where I'd go, how I'd afford movers, how unfair it felt. He knew I was single, working 2 jobs, with no family nearby. The next morning, I decided I wasn't just going to accept it. I was going to fight. But first, I needed to be sure of my facts. I started Googling everything: tenant laws, city ordinances, rent control policies. I found a few articles that mentioned my exact situation: illegal rent increase without notice. Apparently, landlords in our city needed written justification filed with the housing department for any rent hike above 10%. Mine was 40%. And then I saw it: the city housing inspector's contact form. My hand hovered over the mouse. Was I really going to do this? Because once I hit submit, there was no going back. What would you have done if your landlord suddenly increased your rent illegally? Confront them directly or report it to the city. I didn't press submit right away. For the rest of that morning, I just stared at the form on my laptop. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear exactly, but from that heavy mix of anger and disbelief when someone thinks they can walk all over you. I decided to double-check everything before I made my move. I opened my old email threads with Mr. Campbell, every rent receipt, every maintenance request. He always responded with short, clipped lines. Never polite, never friendly. But 3 months ago, something had changed. He'd started ignoring repair messages. The ceiling leak? No reply. The broken heater? Soon. It felt like he was trying to make the place unbearable so I'd leave on my own. That afternoon, I went downstairs to talk to Mrs. Green, the older lady who lived below me. She'd been in the building for over 20 years, the unofficial historian of our little complex. When I told her about the rent hike, her eyebrows shot up. "He tried the same thing on me last year," she whispered. "Said the building taxes went up. I called the city. They made him roll it back. He's sneaky, dear, always testing who he can scare." That was it. Proof that he'd done it before and that the city had already warned him. I thanked her, went back upstairs, and finally filled out that online complaint form. It asked for dates, screenshots, a copy of my lease. I attached everything. Then I took a deep breath and clicked submit. Within minutes, an automated email appeared in my inbox. "Your report has been received. A housing inspector will be assigned to review your case." I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for days. The next morning, I woke to a knock on my door. It wasn't the inspector. Not yet. It was Mr. Campbell himself. He was in his usual outfit. Stained polo, clipboard in hand, fake smile that never reached his eyes. "Morning," he said. "Got your message. Thought we could talk before this gets complicated." My heart pounded. "How did you know I reported you?" He smirked. "I've been doing this a long time. The city always gives a heads up when a tenant complains. Just remember, things can get messy. Leases can end early, references can vanish." It felt like a threat, plain and simple, but I didn't back down. "Are you threatening me?" I asked quietly. His smile faded. "I'm giving you a chance to fix this yourself. Retract that complaint and I'll forget the increase." I crossed my arms. "I'm not retracting anything." He shrugged. "Your choice." Then he turned and walked down the hall, whistling. When the door clicked shut, I finally let the tremor in my hands show. I was scared, yes, but more than that, I was furious. He wanted me silent, and now I was determined to make sure everyone heard. If your landlord tried to intimidate you after you filed a complaint, would you stay calm and stand your ground, or look for a way to move out immediately? 2 days passed with no word from the city. Every knock on the door made my stomach twist. Every creak in the hallway made me freeze. I was half expecting Mr. Campbell to show up again, maybe angrier this time. But instead, on the 3rd morning, there was a crisp knock. 3 short raps. I looked through the peephole. A woman in a navy jacket stood there, clipboard in hand, ID badge glinting in the light. "Good morning, ma'am," she said when I opened the door. "I'm Inspector Rhodes with the City Housing Department. I received your complaint about a possible illegal rent increase." For the first time in days, I felt relief rush through me. "Yes, that's me," I said. "Thank you for coming." She stepped inside, took a few notes, and asked to see the lease. I handed her my binder. I'd highlighted every relevant clause. She skimmed it quickly, her eyebrows lifting slightly. "This is a fixed-term lease," she said. "No rent adjustment allowed during the term unless it's been approved in writing. Did you receive any official notice?" I shook my head. "Just a text message." Her pen froze mid-scribble. "A text message?" "Yeah," I said, showing her my phone. "Here?" She read the messages, frowned, and muttered, "Unbelievable. We've had a few complaints about this property before." That sentence hit me like a spark. "He's done this to other people too?" She nodded. "More than once. Usually tenants move out before we can build a case." I could feel my heart beating faster. "So, what happens now?" "Well," she said, closing her notebook, I'm issuing a temporary hold on all rent adjustments for this building. I'll need to speak with your landlord, inspect the premises, and file an official report. If he's violating housing codes, he could be fined. Heavily. Just then, her radio crackled. She listened for a second, then looked at me with a small smile. Looks like I'm seeing him sooner than I thought. Outside, I heard a car door slam. Through the window, I saw Mr. Campbell walking across the parking lot, looking irritated, until he spotted her city vehicle parked in front of the building. He froze. Inspector Rhodes turned to me. Would you mind if I speak to him right now? I shook my head, stepping back as she opened the door. Their voices echoed down the hallway, hers calm and official, his sharp and defensive. He tried to laugh it off, saying it was a misunderstanding, just a friendly adjustment, but she wasn't buying it. I could hear her tone shift from polite to firm. You've already been warned once, Mr. Campbell. Continued violations can result in fines up to $12,000. When she said that number, the hallway went silent. Then I heard the sound of his clipboard hitting the floor. I stood by my door, barely breathing, half terrified, half thrilled. For the first time, it felt like the balance had shifted. If you were in her place, would you stay quiet and listen as justice unfolded, or step out and confront the landlord face to face? After the inspector left, the air in the building changed. It wasn't something you could see, but you could feel it. The quiet hum of normal days was gone, replaced by an edge, a tension that seemed to hang in every hallway. That night, my hallway light went out. The next morning, my mailbox key stopped working. Coincidence? Maybe. But when I came home from work to find a notice of lease violation taped to my door, signed by Mr. Campbell, I knew exactly what was happening. It claimed I was improperly disposing of trash and creating disturbance with loud music, which was ridiculous. I worked late shifts. I barely even watched TV. My first instinct was to panic. Then I remembered what Inspector Rhodes had said. If anything changes, any pressure, any retaliation, document it. So I did. I took photos of the notice, the broken hallway light, the jammed mailbox. I even recorded a short video explaining everything, time-stamped on my phone. The next morning, I emailed her. Hi, Inspector Rhodes. I believe my landlord may be retaliating after your visit. She replied within an hour. Thank you for documenting. Do not remove the notice from your door. I'll handle it. By afternoon, Mr. Campbell's white van was back in the parking lot. He was standing by the mailboxes pretending to fix something when I walked past. Having fun filing complaints? He said without looking up. I stopped. You broke my mailbox. He finally looked at me, eyes cold. Careful what you accuse people of. You might find your lease terminated for false claims. I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me afraid. Inspector Rhodes told me to document everything, I said evenly. For the first time, his smirk faltered. Then he laughed. You think the city cares about one little tenant? They'll lose your file in a week. He turned and walked away, whistling that same tune from before, the one that made my skin crawl. That night, I called Mrs. Green again. She said quietly, he's been doing it for years, honey, harassing anyone who speaks up, but you're the first one who didn't back down. Something in her voice, tired but proud, gave me strength. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for everyone he'd pushed around. Later that week, an official letter arrived in my mailbox, this time from the city housing department. It stated that an investigation was underway, including multiple tenant interviews, and that I'd be contacted for a follow-up inspection. I held that letter in my hands for a long time. For the first time since this nightmare started, I smiled. He could turn off the lights. He could break my locks, but he couldn't silence the truth that was coming for him. If your landlord started retaliating after being reported, would you stand firm like she did, or would you start looking for a safer new place to move into? A few days later, the city inspector called me again. Her voice was calm but focused. We're extending the investigation, she said. Several tenants came forward after your complaint. Seems your landlord's been playing this game for years. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that I wasn't alone, anger that it had gone on this long. How many people? I asked. She hesitated. At least 6 so far. Some moved out after illegal notices. Some paid higher rent just to avoid trouble. One even said she lost her security deposit for violating pet rules, even though she never had a pet. I could hear papers shuffling on her end. It's a pattern, she added. A deliberate one. When we hung up, I sat in silence for a while. I looked around my little apartment, the one I'd made feel like home, and felt the walls suddenly heavier. Every corner held echoes of his manipulation, his greed. That weekend, I met 2 other tenants in the laundry room. One was a young couple with a baby, the other, an older man named Roger who'd lived here longer than anyone. When I mentioned the investigation, Roger sighed. I tried to report him once, he said, but he called me a liar. Said he'd lose my rent payments if I kept talking. You're brave, kid. Most of us just give up. The young mother nodded. He increased ours too. Said we were using too much water. Who even says that? We all laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it felt good to share the absurdity out loud. Over the next few days, I started noticing things. Neighbors whispering in the hallway. A clipboard nailed to the bulletin board labeled Building Code Review. City cars parked outside at odd hours. Then, one morning, I saw it. A bright yellow paper taped to the lobby door. It read, Notice of Official Inspection. Authorized by City Housing Authority. My heart raced. This was it, the big inspection. When I went upstairs, I found another note slid under my door. It was from Mr. Campbell. Short, angry, handwritten. You're ruining everything. You think the city will protect you? They won't. You'll regret this. I read it 3 times, my hands trembling. Not from fear this time, but from a rush of defiance. I took a photo, emailed it straight to Inspector Rhodes. Her reply came back within minutes. Do not respond. Keep the letter as evidence. You did the right thing. That message, those 4 words, you did the right thing, settled in my chest like armor. By evening, the building buzzed with rumors. Someone said the city found unregistered units in the basement. Another claimed there were missing safety reports. I didn't know what was true yet, but I could feel something shifting. Something big. The truth was clawing its way out, and soon, everyone would see exactly who our landlord really was. If you discovered your landlord had been exploiting multiple tenants for years, would you confront him directly? Or let the city handle it completely? The inspection notice said 10 a.m., but by 9, the building already felt alive with nervous energy. Doors opening and closing, tenants whispering in hallways, the smell of coffee and anxiety mixed in the air. I stood by my window, watching 2 white city vehicles pull into the lot. Inspector Rhodes stepped out first, clipboard in hand, followed by 2 other officials with measuring tools and cameras. They looked professional, serious, and determined. At exactly 9:57, Mr. Campbell's van screeched into the parking lot. He jumped out, waving his arms like a man about to perform damage control. "You can't just barge in here," he shouted before they even reached the steps. Rhodes didn't flinch. "You were notified in writing, Mr. Campbell. We have full authorization." He muttered something about tenant drama and false claims, but she was already walking past him, heading straight for the main hallway. I peeked out my door as they started inspecting the walls, taking pictures of exposed wiring, chipped paint, water damage near the ceiling. She wrote something down every few seconds. When she reached my apartment, she smiled slightly. "You ready?" I nodded, more than ever. She walked in, checked the windows, the smoke detector, the plumbing. Then she turned to me. "You mentioned leaks before?" I pointed to the ceiling corner near the bookshelf. She pressed gently against the paint. It sank inward with a wet squelch. Her eyes narrowed. Mold buildup. Unreported. She took photos, then jotted a note. "He's been avoiding required repairs, hasn't he?" I exhaled. "For months." Outside, I could hear him pacing in the hall, trying to charm the second inspector. "This place is fine, really. Tenants exaggerate." Then a loud voice echoed down the hallway. It was Roger, the older tenant. "Exaggerate? My ceiling collapsed last winter, you cheap crook." The inspector with the camera turned immediately, recording everything. One by one, doors opened. Tenants stepped out, all with their own complaints. Mrs. Green pointed out the broken elevator. The young mother mentioned the heating issue. For the first time, the building wasn't silent. It was alive, united. Mr. Campbell's face turned red. "You people don't understand how property management works." Rhodes folded her arms. "We understand perfectly. You've been violating city housing codes for over 2 years." He froze. "How would you know that?" She held up a folder thick with papers. "Because we pulled your records." Silence filled the hallway. Only the hum of the inspector's camera remained. She spoke again, calm, cold, and final. "You'll receive an official notice of fines and potential license suspension. You're also under review for tenant harassment." He tried to speak, but nothing came out. His mouth opened and then closed. I looked at the other tenants. Some were smiling, some were crying quietly. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, heart pounding, finally realizing we'd won the first battle. If you were there during the inspection, would you step forward to share your story too? Or stay silent and watch justice unfold? The next morning, the entire building buzzed with whispers. Someone said the inspector stayed late into the evening, going through every unit, every basement corner, even the old storage rooms. Another tenant swore they saw them measuring cracks in the foundation. Whatever they found, it must have been serious, because by noon, 2 city enforcement vans were parked outside. One of them had a bright yellow sticker on the side that read, "Housing Compliance Division." Mr. Campbell's van, however, was gone. When I checked the lobby bulletin board, there was a new paper pinned under the inspection notice. "Property under city review. Owner restricted from collecting rent until compliance is verified." I stared at those words for a long time. He couldn't collect rent. He couldn't harass tenants. For once, he couldn't control anyone. Mrs. Green came up beside me, her cardigan slipping off one shoulder. "You did this, dear," she said softly. "We've been living under his thumb for too long." I smiled a little shyly. "We all did it. I just pressed send that night. The tenants gathered in the courtyard for the first time. Someone brought cookies. Someone else brought a pot of coffee. It wasn't a planned meeting. More like an unspoken moment of unity." Roger leaned back in his chair. "City's not playing around this time," he said. "He's facing fines for every violation. Could add up to 10, maybe 12 grand. The young mother, Claire, nodded. They even took pictures of the baby's room. Said the mold count was too high for safe air. "I've been breathing that for months." Her voice trembled. I reached over and touched her hand. "He's not getting away with it anymore." For the first time since all this began, I felt a deep calm settle inside me. Not relief exactly, but justice. The kind that's been waiting too long to be served. Later that night, I received an email from Inspector Rhodes. Preliminary findings confirmed. Multiple code violations, harassment reports, and unapproved rent increases. Case will proceed to administrative hearing. Then, at the bottom of the message, she added one line that made my throat tighten. "Your courage encouraged others to come forward." Thank you. I stared at the screen for a long time. That single sentence felt heavier than any victory, but it wasn't over yet. Because the next morning, I got another text from an unknown number. "Hope you're happy. You've ruined my business. I won't forget it." No name, no number I recognized, but I didn't need one. I knew exactly who it was. I saved the message, took a screenshot, and sent it straight to the inspector again. The battle might have been turning in my favor, but it was clear. He wasn't finished fighting yet. If your landlord started sending threatening anonymous messages after being caught, would you block the number or forward it straight to the authorities? The text replayed in my head all morning. "Hope you're happy. You've ruined my business." It felt like poison seeping through calm water. I kept checking over my shoulder, wondering if his van would suddenly appear or if he'd try to come inside pretending to fix something. But the building was different now. The fear that used to sit quietly in the corners had shifted into something stronger, solidarity. When I went downstairs to get the mail, Roger was in the lobby fixing the old bulletin board. He looked up, smiled, and said, "He's been calling everyone. Trying to scare folks into saying nice things about him to the city." "Is anyone actually doing it?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not this time." Later, I ran into Claire carrying her baby. If he calls me again, I'm recording it, she said firmly. The city told us they can use any voicemails as evidence. It amazed me. A week ago, everyone kept their heads down, avoiding eye contact. Now, people were standing taller, talking louder. I still felt anxious, though. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected another message. And then, one evening, it came. A video this time. It showed the parking lot, my car, with the caption, "Nice car. Shame if something happened to it." My hands went cold. I didn't think twice. I forwarded it to Inspector Rhodes and called the non-emergency police line like she'd instructed. Within 20 minutes, 2 officers were at my door. They watched the clip, took notes, and told me to stay inside that night. One of them said, "If he's already under investigation, this is only digging his hole deeper." "Don't worry, ma'am. You did the right thing." I sat on the couch after they left, hugging my knees, watching the flashing blue lights fade down the street. For a long time, the apartment felt too quiet. Then, a soft knock on my door. It was Mrs. Green holding a plate of cookies. "He's not worth your fear, dear," she said. "You lit a fire in this building. We're not letting it go out." She sat with me for a while, talking about her years here. The winter her pipes burst and he made her pay for the repair. The time he threatened to double her rent because her niece visited for a week. It all came pouring out. And I realized something. His power had never been real. It only existed because everyone believed they were alone. Now they didn't. That night, I slept with my phone on the nightstand, knowing if he tried anything again, I wouldn't face it alone. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was ours. When you see someone standing up to unfair treatment, do you join them or wait to see how it plays out first? The city hearing was scheduled for Tuesday morning at 10. I barely slept the night before. Every creak in the ceiling sounded like footsteps. Every car that passed made my heart skip. But when the sun came up, something inside me steadied. I looked at my reflection, tired eyes, messy ponytail, coffee-stained hoodie, and thought, no one can take this from me anymore. At 9:40, I walked into the municipal building with Claire and Roger beside me. Mrs. Green came too, leaning on her cane but refusing to stay home. The waiting room was packed with tenants from our complex. Some carried folders, others just looked nervous. When Mr. Campbell walked in, the air shifted. He wasn't the smug man from before. His eyes darted between us, his shoulders hunched. His lawyer trailed behind him, flipping through a thick stack of papers. Inspector Rhodes greeted everyone politely but firmly. "We'll begin in a few minutes," she said, her tone all business. We were led into a small hearing room. Plain walls, long wooden table, microphones that hummed faintly. The inspector sat at the head. "Mr. Campbell," she began, "you're here today because multiple tenants have filed formal complaints about rent increases and unsafe conditions. We've completed our inspection and reviewed the evidence," he interrupted almost immediately. "These people are exaggerating. They just don't want to pay fair rent." Rhodes didn't even look fazed. She opened a folder and read from her notes. "Our findings show 26 separate code violations, including mold growth, faulty wiring, and inadequate heating in multiple units." A murmur rippled through the room. Roger whispered, "26, under his breath. Rhodes continued. "Additionally, we found evidence that rent was increased beyond the city's legal limit, and in some cases, tenants were charged for repairs that should have been covered by the landlord." Campbell slammed his palm on the table. "They signed the leases." They agreed. Rhodes looked up calmly. "Mr. Campbell, intimidation and illegal clauses don't make an agreement valid." I felt a rush of emotion, anger, relief, something in between. Then she turned toward me. "Ms. Morales, you were the first to file. Would you like to say anything before we proceed with penalties?" I took a deep breath. I didn't come here to destroy anyone's business. I just wanted a fair home. But when you make people afraid to ask for heat or water, that's not business. That's cruelty. No one deserves to live like that. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then, Mrs. Green began to clap. One by one, others joined her. Softly at first, then louder. Campbell's lawyer whispered something to him, but he just stared down at the table. Rhodes nodded once. "Thank you, Miss Morales." That was brave. Her next words made the whole room exhale at once. "The city will be issuing fines and suspending Mr. Campbell's rental license pending further review. Have you ever witnessed justice being served after someone tried to abuse their power? How did it make you feel?" When the decision was read aloud, I didn't cheer. I just sat there, my hands clasped tight, letting the words sink in. Fines, suspension, tenant reimbursement. For once, the system had actually listened. After the hearing, people hugged me in the hallway. Claire cried into my shoulder, whispering, "You did it, Mia. You actually did it." But it didn't feel like I did it. It felt like we did. Every single person who stopped hiding and started speaking. Outside, the morning sun felt warmer than usual. For months, this building had been a shadow over my life. Now it felt like someone had opened the blinds for the first time. A week later, Rhodes visited again, just to check the premises. Mr. Campbell hadn't been seen since the hearing. A management company was temporarily handling rent collection and repairs. They fixed the broken elevator within 3 days. The heat worked. The hallway light stayed on. It was surreal watching the place slowly come alive again. Roger organized a tenant meeting in the lobby. People brought snacks, laughter, even music. Mrs. Green baked a pie. We discussed forming an official tenant association. Something permanent, something that couldn't be ignored next time. When I spoke, I said, "We spent so long thinking we were powerless. But power isn't something someone gives you. It's something you claim when you refuse to be silent." The room fell quiet, then broke into applause. It wasn't just about the rent anymore. It was about dignity. Later that night, I sat by my window watching the city lights flicker. For months, I dreaded coming home. Now, my little apartment finally felt safe again. I still had the inspector's card pinned to the fridge, just in case, but somehow I didn't think I'd need it anymore. Claire texted me a photo of her baby giggling on the newly cleaned floor with the message, "Finally feels like home again." And Mrs. Green left me a note slipped under my door that read, "You gave us our peace back. Thank you, dear." I smiled, folded it neatly, and tucked it inside my journal. The fear that used to live in my chest had turned into something different now, pride. Not loud or flashy, just steady. The kind that grows from knowing you faced someone powerful and didn't back down. As I turned off the lights, I whispered to myself, this is what justice feels like. And for the first time in a long time, I fell asleep without worrying about tomorrow. Because tomorrow finally belonged to us. What would you have done if you were in my place? Stayed quiet and hoped it got better? Or stood up even if it meant risking everything?